And welcome in everyone to RedRaiders.com. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Zach.
And you're on the AJ Media pregame show for Texas Tech versus TCU. Now, Zach, Tech has played very well versus TCU the past 2 times.
Yeah, you know, they opened up Big 12 Conference play with 2 wins, which is all you can ask for. The last time they went to Fort Worth, I think it raised the heart rate of every Texas Tech fan in existence. Multi-overtime game, really one of the more exciting games that I've got to cover during my career. And it really shows you how tight of a rival these 2 teams are. But this week, the surprising thing, not that we should be surprised by anything Las Vegas does, Texas Tech, a 23-point underdog at TCU. If that doesn't piss them off a tad, I don't know what will. Take that kind of as a slap in the face. I think Tech has something to prove here. I think you're going to see an inspired effort out of the Red Raiders in Fort Worth.
All right, so what should TCU do to win this game?
I think it's simple. Well, simple it's when you have a kid like this, Trevon Boykin. If Boykin has the game that he expects to have and he's able to do both of his facets, which is passing the ball really well, running the ball really well, when he breaks containment, TCU will win this game. If they have a good game out of Trevon Boykin, the Frogs will win.
All right, and how about Tech?
You know, I'm going to say something that sounds like a mouthful, but Texas Tech has to have its best offensive performance of the year. Right?
Yes,
Pretty simple thing to have happen there. You can't have the mistakes. They're going to have to play at a higher level. They're going to have to score a lot of points to beat TCU. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. If Davis Webb and company can come out and have their best inspired performance, Texas Tech can upset TCU.
Now, Zach, let's look at the amped-up highlight of the week. Plenty of highlights from last week versus Kansas.
Yeah, it's actually nice to be able to do an amped-up highlight because they had a win over KU, and they actually played really well both on the defense and offensive side of the ball. So here are some of our favorite moments from the Red Raiders' win over the Jayhawks.
Now it's time for the keys of the game, Zach.
Number 1, I think, is what we talked about at the start of the show, Trevon Boykin. And this isn't a secret to Texas Tech. They mentioned this several times during the Monday press conference. You have to disrupt Trevon Boykin. You cannot let him sit in his comfort zone and do both things that he does very well. He's throwing the ball the best of his career by far. He shredded Oklahoma State last week. He shredded Baylor. They have just a really fast starting offense. You have to do something to disrupt him, and they talked about that this week. Get into the backfield and contain him. It's not just about rushing and pressuring him, because you have to be careful. If you pressure him the wrong way, you don't have your gaps filled, he can escape and he can hurt you really bad with his feet. What Tech wants to do, they want to get in the backfield, they want to hit him, get him on the ground, and make him think about things. And if you take away one of his go-to things, whether that be running the ball or throwing the ball, Texas Tech's going to be that much more successful, but you cannot let Trevon Boykin be comfortable. That's a big key for the Red Raiders.
Now, Zach, another key to the game?
Davis Webb, Shannon, a huge key to this game. He has to be the man this weekend. The mistake can't be there. And I know there was only one last week in terms of a turnover. You cannot do that against TCU. Their defense is outstanding. You give them extra opportunities, you're going to get wasted at TCU. That's just a simple truth of it. They've started 14-0, as Krista told us yesterday on her show, every game this year. That is impressive. You cannot let that come from a turnover. Davis Webb has to mix it up. They're going to have to throw the ball well. They can't rely purely on the run. Use DeAndre Washington, rack those yards up. But I think Texas Tech can throw on TCU, Shannon. Every team they've played with a good passing offense has racked up 300-plus yards on them throwing-wise. Texas Tech is a good passing offense. If they mix it up and Davis Webb controls the pace, they can score a lot of points on TCU.
And lastly?
Score on special teams. We've talked about penalties a lot. We've beat that into the ground, right? Well, last week, 22 yards in penalties. That was a huge improvement for the Red Raiders. And we have seen penalties more than a couple times this year wipe out really big punt return, kick returns, big special team momentum things. Well, now that they've cleaned up those penalties, what you hope this week is they bust one of those. Get a kickoff return with Jakeem Grant or maybe a punt return with Cameron Batson. If you can score in special teams, you shut that crowd up, momentum gets on your side, and only good things can happen for Texas Tech. Those are my keys to the game, Shannon. Now I guess we can get down to picking this game. A dangerous game to pick because a lot of things can go a lot of directions. It could be a wide margin, short margin. It's kind of tough, so I'm going to do the gentlemanly thing and make you pick first.
Why, thank you, Zach. I actually think TCU is probably going to win this game. They are a destructive team, especially against Big 12 teams. You saw what they did to OSU. it was a disaster. So I think it's going to be 42-28 TCU.
You know, and that's about the margin Las Vegas has this game at. They've got an over and under of about 71 points, a 23-point favorite to TCU. I don't agree with Vegas. I don't think it's going to be that wide margin of a game. I do think a ton of points are going to be scored. I think Tech can score on TCU. What I worry about is TCU's offense getting momentum, and they've done that against Tech, you know, especially last time in Fort Worth. And if they're able to score at will, I do not know if Tech has the offensive firepower to keep up with them. I think you're going to see a really good game. That's what we've seen the last 2 years. I do, however, think Trevon Boykin's going to be too much for Texas Tech. I just don't think they can match him score for score. I do think a lot of points will be scored, but I'm looking at something like TCU 45, Texas Tech 31. That's not a knock against Tech. I just think TCU is that much of an improved team from what we saw last season.
Now, Zach, I hope we're dead wrong with this.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure most Tech fans hope that we're dead wrong too, but hey, you know what? We're just two idiots on a camera. Hopefully we're dead wrong and Tech can get a big win over TCU.
Now, stay tuned, RedRaiders.com and LubbockOnline.com for all your Texas Tech football information. But now we're going to bid you farewell. I'm Shannon.
I'm Zach.
And you're on RedRaiders.com.